Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Aux Talks. It is Monday, February 26th, 2024. Hope you had a productive weekend. Tried to make some friendly suggestions during Friday's show and then throughout the weekend shows that each of you, given the threats that we're being faced with around this country right now, not only the threats from crime rising from the illegal immigration and from crime rates rising in our inner cities, everywhere actually, threats from potential cyber attacks, threats from internet going down, phones going down, all those kind of things. I hope that you took the opportunity to either go back through and re-examine the preps you have in place and start and go category by category, or examine what you need to do to start to protect yourself and your family when, not if, one of these things happens, which prevents you from getting necessary medication, which prevents you from communicating with your loved ones, which potentially puts you or your loved one in jeopardy of life, meaning getting seriously injured or, God forbid, killed by somebody who's in this country illegally. We're going to discuss an article on that today. We're also going to touch upon this whole idea of a quiet firing, which is making its way through the corporate world now. Not something new, but it's ugly. It's rearing its head again. So I want to discuss these things. Thank you for subscribing to this channel. We are growing. Thank you for all of your support. It means a lot to me. The comments, keep them coming. I do read them all and try to respond as time permits. Please share the videos with everybody you can think of. This is the calm before the storm. I hope you're getting ready, and not only in terms of your preps for food and water and security, all the things I've been discussing, but also assets. Do you have some assets outside the system? Do you have some cash reserves? If you lose your job, or if you can't get to work one day because the power's out, do you have some ability to buy necessities, to pay your bills, things of that nature? Let me start by jumping into this article that's obviously very sad. I'm sure you all have been following this Laken Riley story, who was the 22-year-old nursing student that was killed in Georgia days ago. And it turns out that she was murdered by somebody who had come into this country illegally. So let me talk about what the takeaway from this story was, and that's the main title of this video, is that it could have been avoided. Once again, what we see is a complete failure on a federal, state, and local level to take this issue seriously and to try to implement some rules, laws on the books, procedures that prevent these illegal immigrants from being released after being detained, especially those ones that have criminal records. And what you're going to hear in this case is this individual, this person, what's his name? Jose Antonio Ibarra had a background, and he worked as an Uber driver in New York City. Here's the article. It says illegal immigration from The Hedge last night. Illegal immigration in Georgia murder was released, illegal immigrant in Georgia murder was released from custody twice after previous arrests. I don't care who you are, especially if you're a parent of a young, bustling person who's getting educated and this happened. It would literally destroy your life. So this kind of stuff should really inflame all of us. It says, newly emerging details following the arrest of Jose Antonio Ibarra demonstrate the gross negligence that enabled him to enter into the country before taking residence in Georgia, ultimately leading to the murder of Laken Riley. According to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, Ibarra was arrested near the U.S.-Mexico border on September 8th of 2022 after entering this country illegally. Ibarra was subsequently released following his arrest before leaving Texas to take refuge in New York City, where he was able to find gainful employment as an Uber driver, nonetheless. It says He was arrested in New York City again just 1 week after being released by U.S. Customs and Border Protection after entering the U.S. illegally. According to a statement made by Immigration and Customs Enforcement following his arrest, quote, New York City police also arrested Ibarra last September and charged him with, get this, quote, with acting in a manner to injure a child less than 17 years old and a motor vehicle violation. Did that raise a red flag? Evidently not. Following his arrest in New York City, NYPD released Ibarra before ICE could issue a detainer to process him for deportation. Failure. It says, nevertheless, Ibarra left New York, moving to Athens, Georgia, where he would be arrested in connection, as we know, with Riley's murder just in the last few days. The catch and release policy that enabled Ibarra to be released from ICE and NYPD custody and find his way, it says, all the way down to Georgia, exemplifies the deleterious ramifications that the current administration's reckless immigration policy has had. Had Ibarra, and this is the crux of it, had Ibarra faced more swift action following his arrest in New York City, the tragedy of Laken Riley's murder could have been avoided entirely, the article says. It says Ibarra's illegal immigration into the United States from Venezuela has been speculated to have been assisted by the Hebrew Immigration Aid Society, a Jewish American NGO that has facilitated immigrants from South America like Ibarra with the arduous journey of their to North America. It says, given the geographic barrier that the Darien Gap separating the South and Central America poses, HIAS dedicates its resources to assist migrants to their perilous journey, across the 60-mile uninhabited tropical wilderness. I reported on that last week, how a lot of these immigrants, I think we did it when we were talking about the Chinese nationals coming into this country, thousands of them, tens of thousands of them, fighting age men. And that's how they're getting here. So the number is expected to have risen above 500,000 in 2023 to the assistance of HIAS, which has established a dedicated field office in the Darien province of Panama. Ibarra's former employer, it says, Uber, is one of the many corporate sponsors of HIAS. HIAS, Hebrew Immigration Aid Society. I've never heard of it. Again, I'm not getting political. I am just reporting what is happening. These people are getting here. They're not getting here without assistance. And once they're here, not all of them, but many of them have intention to do you and to do me and to do our families harm. So wake up, people. What does this mean? And this article goes on to say basically how the media, the mainstream media, is not giving this story the coverage that it deserves. And more importantly, it's not surprisingly spinning this to be something different than what it actually is. For example, it says the callousness is epitomized in an AP article on Riley's murder, which trivializes her death. It says the article uses Riley's murder to examine the, quote, fears of solo female athletes, end quote. And though it mentions Ibarra as being the suspect arrested in her murder, he is referred to as an Athens, Georgia, where he was, resident, with no mention of his immigration status made in the story at all. Haven't seen that story. The bottom line is this. These incidents are happening at a much greater rate than is being led on by the mainstream media. Yes, this one got picked up. It did get coverage on some other media. I understand that. But look, we have to assume that two things. Number one, these stories are not going to get the media coverage they deserve because they go against the administration's narrative. This is a huge topic, guys, coming into the 2024 election. I mean, it might be one of the largest or one of the biggest ticket items that is currently going to be and have to be addressed. So pay attention to this. But it means, number one, these items are not going to be covered, so we're not going to be hearing about all these incidents. You know, some of them trivial, some of them as bad as this one with Riley. with Lakin. But number one. Number two, nobody is going to be there to provide security for you and your family. No one is going to be there to protect you and your family if and when something like this puts yourself or them in danger. So what are you doing? Do you have any strategy implemented for security? Do you have tools? Are you trained to use them? Are you training on a regular basis? Do you have other sources of personal protection that you can use to protect yourself and your family? Are they readily deployable? They're not good if they're sitting in your car. They're not good if you're a woman, if they're zipped up in your purse. Again, you have to follow the rules of your jurisdiction relative to all these items. We've talked about it on this channel. You have to seek your own independent investigation on these things and obviously follow the laws in your state and jurisdiction. But folks, please take this seriously. It's such a sad situation for that lady. She was young, prime of her life, studying. Evidently, I read an article about her, said that her grades were impeccable. She was on honor rolls and all these kinds of things, doing all the right things, family doing all the right things for her. And look at this tragedy. It is not going to stop. The goal is not to allow for it to stop. The next article is talking about employers and how there have been a lot of very public, let's say, firings, reductions, staff, layoffs announced last year and a lot even this year starting already with the tech companies, the banking sector. We've heard all those stories. I've shared them with you many, many times on this channel. But let me talk about this issue. I thought it was interesting out of the Business Insider today. It says bosses are back in power, meaning the pendulum has shifted back in favor of the employers, not the employees. After the pandemic and during the pandemic, it ran up. Everyone was staying at home, making their own rules. Employers were loading up on employees. It has changed. And this says bosses are back in power. So get used to companies quiet cutting and quiet firing workers this year. Again, from the Business Insider, it says some companies are finding more discreet ways to trim their workforce without carrying out dramatic layoffs as they attempt to cut costs during a period of economic uncertainty. And if you think the economic uncertainty is great now, wait for the next quarter, 2-3 quarters into 2025. It is going to get a lot more perilous from my perspective. It says, while firms like Google, Meta, and Salesforce have laid off thousands of workers at the expense of intense public criticism, they've also resorted to less obvious tactics to edge workers out quietly. Look, if you work for somebody, this applies to you. It says, technology firm Dell recently ordered hybrid employees to return to the office 3 days a week, regardless of where they live. Workers who choose to be fully remote will face limited career progression, it says, according to an anonymous source who told this to the Register. So there are different tactics which are now being employed, and will continue to be employed to put pressure on employees behind the scenes, either force them out, force them to accept or retain a position that they're overqualified for, and essentially force them out because you leave and go somewhere else thinking you're getting taken advantage of. It says, after laying off 10,000 employees in late 2022, Meta introduced more stringent performance reviews, including 2 yearly performance reviews with managers directed to put more employees in low-performing categories, it says. Low performers also received less bonus pay, another way that they cut costs. It says these tactics are more commonly known as quiet firing or quiet cutting, a workplace trend that has taken off after the end of the zero-interest rate era. It's a subtle move by bosses to make a role less appealing, motivating workers to quit rather than forcing them out through layoffs. Now, I'm not an expert on this, but I believe when you quit your job, you also I think in California for sure, maybe it's this way across other states, I believe that you are not able to collect unemployment. So do the research, obviously get professional advice wherever you live and where you're working, but quitting has different consequences than being let go or being fired. So they'll just keep cranking down the restrictions, making the job less appealing, making the workplace within the laws probably less inviting. So some of the ways bosses are making jobs less attractive to employees include putting restrictions on where they can work, cutting workplace perks and benefits, giving harsher performance reviews, and limiting opportunities for career progression. This guy says 20 years ago, some big well-known companies would have car park conversations with employees to lay out their options during periods of cuts. It says, quote, what would happen is your line manager would say, can we have a bit of a chat in the car park? Basically, the conversation was you can either take redundancy and quietly go, or we can go through the performance review and it'll be a miserable and grim process for you. Which do you prefer? A lot of companies sell the rhetoric of we are family to try to create a great public perception of their business. So this quiet firing is a strategy those kind of family businesses will be using and implementing more often to quietly find a way to cut costs, i.e. reduce their headcount. So as part of the reason bosses can employ these tactics is that the power is no longer in the hands of workers, and the pendulum has swung in the opposite direction. So again, I talk about this almost every day, certainly a couple times a week, about starting your own business, becoming your own boss if you can, create a situation where you can earn income without relying on a paycheck from an employer or a boss. Obviously, depending on what kind of a career you're in, it's not possible maybe to have that be your 9 to 5, but then pivot into some kind of a side hustle. Add that to what you're doing. Try to insulate yourself. This stuff is going to keep growing. These layoffs are going to keep getting worse this year. And I want you to hear about that quiet firing. If you're experiencing this kind of, let's say maybe undulating pressure, if it will, in the workplace or from your supervisors, leave a comment below. Share your experience if you want to. And with that being said, I'll be leaving here in about an hour to get my workout in. I took the weekend off, as I shared yesterday. Looking forward to getting back in action today with the workouts. I did do my half-an-hour treadmill walk midday today. Hope all of you, please get your steps in. Be moving. Do not get sedentary. Get some strength training in every day, and please watch the diet. It is a critical component of everything that we're trying to discuss to get healthier. We have to be healthier and more physically fit to both physically and also emotionally and mentally deal with the challenges that are going to be unfolding for all of us in the coming months and years with this country and this economy. Thanks for watching. Sorry I went a bit long today. Hope you have a great evening. See you all tomorrow. Bye.